Just waiting for everyone to come through now. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've had a brilliant weekend. Welcome to episode 3 of our latest webinar, in2. With Sister Entry. Today we've got Simmons and Simmons with us, and we're going to be talking through what is commercial law, what do commercial lawyers do. So a really interesting episode that links to a lot of the questions that we've had in our previous sessions so far. As always, I'll just do a quick reminder. You should have your timetable, which obviously you're all accessing well, so you know when all of the sessions will be hosted. You just use the same link as always. And I'll just make a note now as well, in case Simmons and Simmons want you to do any parts of the session that would be interactive. Just go into your bar at the bottom, click the 3 dots for more, go into the Q&A session, and then we can go through questions that you might have, and you can interact with the session that is being hosted by Simmons and Simmons. I've just seen our co-CEO Patrick has joined. Evening, Patrick.
Hi, Finn.
Anything to add from you before we kick off?
Sorry, Finn.
Anything from you to add before we kick off?
I don't think so. Just thank you very much for doing this. Break a leg and all that stuff.
Thanks so much. Right, we'll pass over to Simmons and Simmons. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much, Finny, for the introduction. Can everyone hear me?
We can.
Great, thank you. Well, it's wonderful to meet you all, to meet you all. I'm Lucy. I'm an associate here at Simmons and Simmons. I work in employment law. A very warm welcome to this session, and thank you to all the students joining us. I'm so impressed that I presume you're sort of post AS or A levels, and I'm very impressed that you're joining us. So thank you for being here. We will try to make it interesting, and we've got some interactive Q&As coming up. So everyone listen up. On the Simmons end today, I'm joined by Rebecca Rumble and Lily Warmington, who are from our early careers team, and by Angel, who is one of our solicitor apprentices here. So you'll be hearing a bit more from them hopefully later on. So let's kick off. Well, what is the city, and what does it do? It's actually a really good question. I remember feeling quite daunted by it before I started finding my way working in the city. This is when people say the city, what they really usually mean is the financial centre of London. So that's the banks and the law firms and the tech companies and the insurance companies, and many more different types of companies. What we're going to talk about today is what these people actually do, and also how it really links to your life, to your future jobs, and to your money. So it's really relevant to everyone, even though the city sounds like this slightly strange concept sometimes. Brilliant, we've already jumped to the next slide, super. So what really is it? Well, it's a small area of London, and you might recognise names such as the Square Mile or St Paul's, Monument, Blackfriars, all these places. Our office is in Moorgate, which is great. It's a lovely location, and it is a small area of London, but it's got a sort of huge impact on the UK and globally. The decisions that get made here are really huge and affect companies and people very far and wide. It's sort of a lot of where the invisible work happens. So when you go shopping or online shopping, let's say, and you buy clothes, what you don't see is lots of the things that the city does. So things like the banks that are moving the money around, and the insurance companies that are behind the work that goes into making your clothes, and things like that. And I think that's part of what makes it quite an exciting and interesting place. So why should we care about it? If we just move to the next slide, please. Thanks. Well, as I said, or sort of just alluded to, if you have ever, which I'm sure you have, tapped a bank card or Apple Pay at a shop, or ordered clothes online, or watched a big football transfer happening. The city has been involved, and it's often been involved to a large degree, but it might have been in the background. And there's sort of endless connection really between what happens in the city and what we do in our everyday. So just looking at this slide, a few examples might be things, as I just mentioned, like paying on a card or on your phone. It might be buying trainers. It might be using apps on your phone. That's things like Spotify and YouTube too. It might be things like getting paid by your job, and it's things like insurance. So there's a whole host of opportunity out there to work in this world. And there are 5 big sectors that we're going to touch upon. One of them is the financial services, so that's banks and investment firms. Then there are legal services, so places like Simmons and Simmons, a city law firm. There's the technology and the fintech world, which is so interesting and is growing exponentially. The insurance world, and the professional services. And we'll come on to them all in a little bit more detail. But what's interesting is that they often are all working together. So one big deal or one big project will be happening, and all 5 of these sectors could be involved as a huge team going on behind the scenes. So if we jump forward, thanks. We were going to start by thinking about financial services. So these are really the businesses that manage money, and it's things like banks who are moving money safely from one place to another. It might be investment companies, so they do things like helping pensions and savings grow over time. When you see things like stock prices on the news, which sometimes just look like lots of numbers and graphs, what you're really seeing is that investment world happening in action, and it's the traders and their colleagues who are making those graphs move by buying and selling trades. And how does this really relate to us in our everyday lives? Well, it all relates to things that you will be familiar with, like your bank accounts and your student bank card, for example, any mortgages or loans, student loans, business loans in the future. These all move around through the financial services industry. We then jump on. So when we talk about legal services, this is, places like Simmons, we're really talking about businesses that advise other businesses on legal matters. So, for example, when 2 companies make a deal, so let's say a sports brand decides to team up with a tech company, it's the city lawyers who are writing the contracts, checking them, who are making sure that everything is legally recorded and properly dealt with. And it's going on all the time, relating to things that we experience in our everyday. So that's the contracts that are written to govern the apps that you're going to be using on your phones. And it's things like the rules that protect you as a customer. So when you go and buy your trainers, the rights that you have in relation to returning them if you want to, and what if it's not the right product when it arrives, if you order it online, and things like that. And in my case, because I work in employment law, it's also about the rules that protect you as an employee when you're working somewhere. So it's really interesting and sort of wide-ranging, I think, as our key message, even in the world of law, because there are so many facets of law. So moving on to our next one, technology and fintech. This is a really interesting topic, and I'm sure that these words sound like buzzwords to you from looking at the newspapers and engaging with all the development going on in the UK at the moment. But technology and fintech companies are sort of businesses that are using digital tools, and they're solving problems, they're improving and enhancing and really changing financial services. The sorts of tech roles in this city, there are so many of them, but they include things like the software developers, the data analysts, the sort of cybersecurity experts. And if we think sort of generally about what that technology in this city looks like, this slide's quite helpful. So it says keeping data and money safe, building trading systems and payment apps, analysing enormous amounts of information, and AI is really helpful in driving that as well. Then in the fintech, which is sort of an amalgamation of two words, financial and technology, it's really changed a lot the way we pay, the way we borrow, the way we manage our money. I mean, I remember even 10 years ago, Apple Pay wasn't really a thing, Google Pay wasn't really a thing. We didn't have apps like Revolut and Monzo. These are now all household names and things that we all do that really didn't exist until very recently. And they're things that we are all using the whole time. So it's a really exciting and dynamic world that's really developed over the last few years, and it's continuing to develop at a really rapid rate. Should we go on to the next slide on professional services? I think we might have skipped one. We skipped one. Maybe not. Maybe we'll come on to that one. No, it's all right. Let's go to professional services. Sorry. Thank you. So the professional services industry, this is really specialist advisors. So you may have heard of words like accountants, and these are the people who sort of have amazing attention to detail on money and spreadsheets, and they check that they do things called audits, and they check that the money in businesses is all correctly accounted for. There are the consultants who are real problem solvers of the city, and they advise companies on how they might improve and become more efficient and effective. And then there are general business advisors, which might help with things like planning for the future and whether they need to change their strategy based on anything from business enhancements to geopolitics. So it's another huge world, the professional services world. And they are generally there to help companies to make sensible decisions, and they're often data backed. So other examples of things that they might be helping with could include ensuring that businesses are paying the right amount of tax, making sure that shops and brands are able to survive in booms and busts in difficult times when we're in difficult economic climates, for example, and also helping startups, which is a whole other world, but for them to be able to grow into bigger companies and bigger employers with lots of employees, both in the UK and beyond. So shall we go on to the next slide? Super. Insurance. So insurance is in essence, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we talk about risk shortly, but it's basically about managing what happens when things go wrong. And insurance helps companies because what they do is or individuals really, but what someone does when they are insured is they pay a small amount, either monthly or annually, to the insurance company. And then if something goes horribly wrong, the insurers will pay out. And this is really helpful because it means that, for example, if I have insurance on my mobile phone and then I drop it in a puddle of water and it breaks, I can hopefully get a replacement phone or money to replace it. And so I'm covered by my insurance. Or on a much more big scale, it could be something like those trainers that I was talking about earlier. If you have a big trainer factory and that factory floods because there's an awful storm or there's a leak, and the whole trainer company might have to incur such huge costs resolving the flood, they might just go bankrupt and not be able to exist anymore. But if they've got insurance, then the insurance company will pay for the repairs, and it means that they can continue conducting their business and keep producing trainers for all of us to buy and enjoy. So how does money move around the world then? We're staying on our trainer analogy. This can all really happen in seconds, amazingly, but there are really enormous systems, as well as laws and teams making sure that money moving around the world is happening safely and happening legally. So, for example, if we take ourselves through these steps, you might go on the website, find your trainers, click pay with your card, or if you're on your phone, you might pay with your Apple Pay, and your bank will then send your money to the shop's bank. It might be that you're buying from an American company, so there's a whole currency exchange that happens that you don't even see. And then there are various systems going on in the background, making sure that your money is transferring safely, that it's not a fraudulent payment, and moving those funds safely around. And then the company gets their payment and they arrange for your trainers to be delivered to you. So it's amazing that the city, so much happens so quickly, and there are loads of city roles involved in just that one purchase. So that's the banks and the payment companies. It's the foreign exchange traders who are dealing with the currency exchange. It's the tech and cybersecurity people, and it's of course the lawyers who are looking at the regulations relating to your payment and your rights as a customer. So if we continue, what is risk and why does insurance matter? So this is slightly related to the insurance slide that we just discussed. Risk is really the possibility of something bad or unexpected happening. So there's a few more examples here on circumstances where companies, if they didn't have insurance to help them manage risk, they might feel that they could invest less in growing and they would be more risk averse. So it's really helpful to us that we have a whole insurance industry, because it encourages us to, as a society really, to be more risk taking and entrepreneurial. So some more examples of things like a lorry carrying your trainers perhaps crashes, or we've talked about a flooding shop, but a cyber attack, which is becoming increasingly a really big problem, and that affecting a whole website or a whole business internally. So insurance is a hugely important aspect of managing risk in the city. If we keep going. Great, thank you. So how do city decisions affect jobs, prices, and products? So when the city invests in a new industry, and recent ones might be AI is a really big one, or it might be electric cars or renewable energy, for example, that can really create whole new career paths for people like you in the future. And we don't really know what's to come in the future, but 10 or 15 years ago, we hadn't really heard of AI to begin with, and now there's a huge world of job opportunity out there created by AI. And then there's all these other industries like the renewable energy industry, and it's really exciting and interesting to see how decisions in the city really have a huge impact on which companies are the future huge companies, who gets the loans, who gets invested in, and they have far-reaching influence that impacts all of our lives, such as things like how much things are going to end up costing because of how much they've had investment into them, and things like interest rates and the trading markets. So it's a really interesting sphere to be a part of, and to be able to do things like supporting new ideas to do with renewable energy or new apps and new initiatives. And they can really impact how companies do, whether they survive in a really competitive environment. And we've got a few things on the slide about their everyday impact. So things like where the jobs are and how much things cost in shops, whether that's from supermarkets to clothes to app subscriptions, and the types of things that are available to you. So if we move on then, I'm going to bring in hopefully Angel, who is going to help me with our scenario challenge. So anyone that's fallen asleep, now is the time to wake up. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of these sectors, or all of these sectors really, in practice, and where we might be seeing them crop up. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just talk through what we're going to do and then pass over to Angel to help me. So we're going to be doing a bit of a case study exercise, and I want us all to imagine that we are a UK-based sportswear company, and we want to sell our products all over the world. And we're going to be thinking about all the various stages we need to go through to do that, and which city professionals we might need to help us each step of the way. So we'll be talking through this journey, and I and Angel will be asking you at each stage, whether it's a banker, a lawyer, an insurer, a tech company, or someone else, who we might need to help us out to make sure we can get there. So Angel, shall I pass over to you to?
Yes. Thank you, Lucy. So this is the first case study. It says UK sportswear brand goes global. So our story is that a UK sportswear company wants to sell its products worldwide. Which city professionals do they need at each step? So here we've got some details of what they might need to do in order to sell these products. It says getting money to grow, designing and making the products, selling the products online in shops overseas, protecting the business from risks, as Lucy was speaking about, and also following different countries' laws. So have we got any? Oh, yeah. So here we've got the options. Thank you. Here we've got the options: bankers, lawyers, insurers, techs, etc. So which professionals do we think would be needed in this circumstance?
If you want to pop your answers into the Q&A function once you've got them.
Anyone like to be brave?
I've also just seen that we've got a great question in there. So thank you for the fabulous question. And we will come back to that once we've gone through our scenarios. We'll come back to questions.
We've got got a few more actually. We've got financial services, banker, and again, lawyer, banker, lots of bankers.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this is correct. Yeah. So especially like with lawyers, for example, one of the things when considering selling products across different countries that we need to consider are the laws in different countries and how much we will sell products for in different countries. So lawyers can help like the business learn about what laws and what regulations they would have to adhere to. We also need bankers when we're thinking about how much we want to sell the products for. Lawyers for hiring new staff, I can see. Yeah, this is all correct. Thank you, guys. Okay, let's move on to the next scenario. So this is again selling worldwide online. The company launches a new website and a mobile app. It takes payments in different currencies and it needs to protect customer data. Which city professionals do you think are needed here? Tech. Yeah, definitely. They would need people in technology to launch the website, make the website. We've also got more lawyers here Do we have any ideas about what lawyers might do in this circumstance? Like what lawyers would be needed for? Lawyers and insurers. Wow, we've got loads of answers. This is great. Yes, insurer, banker for exchange rates. Yes, that is true. We'd have to look at the different exchange rates. As it says here, we're taking payments in different companies, I mean, currencies. Yes. Okay, yes. Lawyers with AI. So, wow, software developers, financial experts, and banks, which can deal with multiple currencies. Is this expected from a bank? Lucy, are you able to answer that question? They've asked whether banks will deal with different multiple currencies. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a really great question. It's a whole world, the foreign exchange world, and one that I don't work in. But my understanding is that so some banks work in various places, but yes, dealing with currencies and exchanges is a whole industry in itself. So foreign exchange experts are really the people who um, deal with that. But the worlds are very closely interconnected.
Yes. I see another answer here says lawyers can be used for proper online safety regulations. And that is correct. That definitely plays a role. I'm currently sat in the digital business team, and one of the things that we work on are like data protection notices as well. So sometimes when you are using different websites that take on your data, they have to explain how they will use your data. So that's definitely a way that lawyers play a role. But great, let's move on to the next scenario. Making the products abroad. The company has clothes made in factories overseas, and it ships them to overseas to warehouses in the UK and other countries. Which city professionals are needed here? Insurer. Yes, that is definitely true. If we are shipping clothes across a different country, there's always the chance that the clothes can get lost, and therefore we need to insure them. So that is definitely correct. I can see lawyers here again. That is definitely true. Um, Again, lawyers will have to make sure that the company complies to any laws that may be in place when shipping and selling products abroad. So that is definitely true. Have we got any other takers? Insurer. Okay, yes, logistics. Yeah, that's true. Okay, perfect. I think we can move on to the next scenario now.
I would just jump in and add one more is that we've again got the bankers paying the suppliers, and again the bankers dealing with all the various currencies with the foreign exchange. So
Yes.
I would add the bankers as well to that one. And I guess also, even if we were to stretch further, maybe even the consultants who we mentioned very briefly. To that one. So loads involved in that one. Sorry to jump in.
No worries. All right. Then we've got marketing and brand protection. The company runs a global social media campaign, sponsors athletes and events, and protects its logos and designs. Which city professionals do we think are needed here? Yes, I can see someone has said lawyers and they put in brackets maybe IP. So yes, so it says here protects its logo and design. So IP is intellectual property. And so any products that the company has, or even the logos, will have to be, well, they would be intellectual property and they would have to be protected. And that's where lawyers come in with drafting patents or any type of, yeah, protection to make sure that their logos and the designs cannot be copied. And we've got insurer. That is also true. They would probably have to insure their athletes as well. That is a whole different industry. PR. Yeah, so here we can see there's a lot. It's talking about running a global social media campaign. So PR and marketing would definitely play a role in there. Got data analysts, lawyers for the contracts of sponsorship deals and copyright of logos, etc. Yes, and to solve disputes, that is very true. Disputes may arise, so yeah, contentious lawyers would definitely play a role in there. Lucy, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
No, those are brilliant answers. These answers are absolutely fantastic. It's really helpful when the answers that you're giving are giving little explanations as well of why you think someone. So keep them coming. They're brilliant.
Yes. Oh, and I can see one more answer here that says patent lawyer. So yes, again, protection of intellectual property is very important there. So that is a very good answer. All right. And I think that is our last scenario. Oh, you've got one more. Okay. This one says problems and disputes. The company has a batch of faulty products. A supplier breaks the contract and a customer sues over an injury. All right. Which professionals do we think we need here? Okay, we've got lawyer. That's definitely correct. Here, when it talks about a supplier has broken the contract, that could cause a dispute to arise. And so we would definitely need lawyers there. We've also got personal injury lawyers. That is right. I can see someone has said lawyer and insurer. So yes, the person who, first of all, it says the customer sues over an injury. We have to check whether the company has insurance for that. And yeah, so law would definitely play a role in there. Lawyers will definitely help out in any type of insurance disputes that arise. And we've got contract lawyer, personal injury lawyer, clinical negligence lawyer. Wow, okay. Seems over an injury and breach of contract. Yes, that is a really good answer. Um, yes, we could claim that there's negligence and that's why the customer has gotten an injury. Would this be considered a civil matter? Or could a break of contract cross the line into criminality? That's a good question. Lucy, do you want to take over that one?
Yeah, sure. I think that is a really great question. I think that would likely be a civil matter due to a sort of breach of contract, which it would fall under. Criminal matters tend to be things like criminal fraud and bribery and violence and things like that. I suspect it obviously depends on the facts and the circumstances, but it's really likely to be one that's a civil matter. But it's slightly confusing, the terminology, because civil disputes still get dealt with in court and are in many ways very similar in terms of protocol to criminal disputes. So they'd still be dealt with by the lawyers and have a fairly similar, albeit with differences, case.
And then I can see just one more answer here. It says a lawyer to argue on the suing case and an insurer to see if they can repair or claim back money for the injury. Yeah, so this is a very good answer. And as Lucy said, it's really nice when you guys give explanations. But yes, that is 100% correct.
But I may
Right.
just jump in here a bit. There are circumstances in which criminal offences can append to a director of a company if there's death or personal injury, particularly if that company didn't do what it should have done to look at health and safety to make sure people were kept safe, etc. There was a case several years ago where I think it was like a school canoeing trip that happened, and a couple of the school kids ended up getting swept overboard and died, and it was just there wasn't enough health and safety taken, precautions taken. So it can happen. The bar is, as you'd expect in a criminal matter, pretty high, but it can happen. And there are generally some offences that can be appended to directors, as Lucy was saying, around things like fraud, etc. And that's quite often where company directors are prepared to pay the big fees of city law firms, because it can go to them and them going to prison. So they tend to release their budgets at that stage a bit more willingly.
Right, thank you, Patrick. Okay, I think we can move on to the next. I think that's the last scenario. All right, so where do solicitor apprentices fit in? So I'll quickly, as a solicitor apprentice, talk about what solicitor apprentices do and how we fit in to the city. So a solicitor apprenticeship is a degree apprenticeship, and it essentially is when you work, well, a solicitor apprenticeship is when you work at a law firm alongside other solicitors, at the same time also studying towards a law degree and also an SQE, which is the solicitor's qualifying exam. So for the first 4 years, you would just be working towards the degree. And then in the last 2 years, you work towards the SQE and are essentially like a trainee solicitor. And yeah, this is an alternative route to the standard route of going to university, studying your SQE and getting a training contract and becoming a solicitor through that route. And essentially, there are loads of different like cases that solicitor and just pieces of work that solicitor apprentices assist lawyers on. We usually rotate through different teams. So right now, I'm currently sat in the digital business team, which basically work on like AI and technology, data privacy, etc. But depending on the type of team that you're in, the work differs. So you can see here some examples of contracting for bank loans, international deals, tech and fintech projects, etc. Some of the work that we do can be helping amend contracts. If you're in like a disputes team or like a contentious team, then you could be helping prepare court bundles, carrying out research. Yeah, there's lots of different work that you could do as a solicitor apprentice, but essentially you get a taste of what it is like to work as a lawyer whilst also studying to become a lawyer. And that practical experience really helps you to like basically improve and basically just become a really good lawyer in the long time because you would have had like 6 years experience before becoming an associate and qualifying. Um, but yeah, so that's something that you can do. I'm a first year apprentice, and a solicitor apprenticeship is something that you can do right after you finish your A levels. And yeah, it's just an alternative route of how you can also work in the city without having to go to uni before working. But yeah, that's pretty much what apprentices do. So yes, here we've got our last slide just talking about your future in the city. So as we've got here, there are different roles that you could fit into the city as a lawyer, going through the solicitor apprentice route, or going through the standard route, going to uni and becoming a trainee. You could be a banker, an investment specialist, software developer, data analyst, accountant, consultant, marketing, etc. But the questions to ask yourself are what roles sound the most interesting to you, and how do you prefer to work? Do you prefer to work with people, numbers, words, technology, etc.? Because each role differs in what you do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah, now I can hand over to Lucy.
Yeah, well, I guess the floor is everyone's for any questions that anybody has. I think we can use our Q&A function if anybody has any.
Thanks very much.
Finley, would you mind if I just threw a question in, if that's okay?
Go for it.
Whenever you watch this in films or on television, let's call it Suits, or other programs, it always seems to be like, one lawyer that can do absolutely everything, and the client walks in and within 3 or 4 hours they're in court, and then the case is settled that day or the next day. And there doesn't seem to be much paper around. Is that an accurate depiction of life at Simmons and Simmons?
It's a good question. Shall I go first, Angel, and then pass to you for your experiences?
Yes.
So no, it's an inaccurate depiction, but in many ways, life as a litigation city lawyer is fabulously glamorous as well. So it doesn't all happen in 3 or 4 hours. It's not Harvey Specter, for anyone who has watched Suits, and it's not Mike Ross with his photographic memory, although AI is pretty good nowadays. So that's getting us to something like that. But things take years, some of these cases. Some of these huge claims are taking years to even get close to trial, with millions and millions of documents involved. It used to be the case that law firms like ours would have rooms that were just filled with boxes of papers, and that has now turned into online filing systems. But there can be enormous teams dealing with some of these business disputes that we cover. I work in employment litigation, where even our matters, which can sometimes be equally enormous, sometimes you get a big equal pay claim, which can involve very many claimants and huge amounts of paperwork. But even those can take years to get through the system, particularly because there's a huge backlog in our employment tribunal system. But the civil and criminal work that our team does takes time. It's very complex. It's paper heavy. It's drafting heavy. Some of these disputes can have 100 parties. So the emails are bonkers every single day, of all the parties liaising with each other. Sometimes a matter starts off as a civil matter and then becomes criminal as well because something is discovered. Things can start small and grow arms and legs. Sometimes what you think is going to be a huge matter does end up settling. It's sort of endlessly exciting and interesting, and court is a truly fascinating place, in my opinion. It is like going to the theatre in some ways, apart from nobody knows quite what's going to happen, which I think is one of the things that makes it so exciting. And another thing that makes litigation, I think, really thrilling in the UK is that you've got an interaction between solicitors and barristers a lot of the time. So it's a slightly confusing distinction, but generally, and I think someone put a question on the chat about this, which I think Joe helpfully answered, so thank you, Joe. But generally, you will have teams of solicitors working in law firms, and they will then be instructing teams of barristers who are then the people who go away and sort of perform in court. So the solicitors will be preparing all the documentation, but working closely the whole time with the barristers, in essence, about what the barristers are going to say when they stand up and try to argue their client's case. So there's a huge amount of teamwork involved. It's not just Harvey Specter and Mike Ross and Donna and all the other, Rachel Zane and all the other fabulous team members. Like, some of these teams are enormous, but it's, in my opinion, equally exciting and rewarding, just in other ways. Does that help answer a few things, Patrick? Is there anything else?
Yeah, it does. I think one of the points that you've made, and I'm just sort of keen that emerging lawyers get, is that there's a lot of it. There's a lot of work, and it is not necessarily all super interesting. It's very well paid, and a lot of it is super interesting. But there are bits where it's a bit like taking GCSEs. You just got to get through it. So it's just, there's quite a lot involved, is what I was going to say.
Yeah, totally. And it's the more you do, the more rewarding it gets, I think, because sometimes as a junior, I loved being a trainee, in which you do quite similar tasks as an apprentice, because you get to go to the meetings and you might be the note taker and you're frantically trying to get down everything that the witness is saying. And you have a really, really important role, but you then need to spend 10 hours tidying up your note afterwards to make it readable and helpful. And that gets better with things like AI, but you might be spending very long hours making enormous bundles that are thousands and thousands of pages long. And obviously, as with anything, as you get more senior, you get to engage a bit more with the strategy sometimes and do the really interesting work, which you do get bits of as a junior, but you often you learn your trade by doing some of the more mundane tasks as well. So I totally agree with you. It's long hours sometimes and it's hard work, but as you say, you are paid well in the city, and it's really rewarding and interesting too, in many ways.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand back to Finn because it looks like there are some really good questions that have come in from our attendees. So the first of which I think is for you, Angel. Finn, would you mind?
Yes. Okay. Oh, I don't mind reading it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
we
great.
can all see them. So I
Okay.
don't think our attendees can see them, so I'll read them out. So yeah, Angel, as a solicitor apprentice, what do you feel you get to experience that university students wouldn't, and how does that put you in an advantage during your journey to become a solicitor?
Okay, well, thank you. That's a good question. I'd say first of all, just the real like world experience of what it is actually like to work in a law firm. And I think it puts me at an advantage because I'm learning the skills that are needed very early on. So, like for example, just working in a corporate environment is very different to going to school or being in university, learning how to speak to people and communicate, not just verbally, but also on emails, for example, just learning how to draft good emails, learning how, like, when you get delegated work, what questions to ask. When you get given work, like you might get given a task that you've never done before. So just asking questions about how to complete the task and also just managing your workload. I think the biggest advantage is just the fact that first of all, an apprenticeship is a lot longer than a training contract. But other than the fact that you wouldn't have studied your SQE and your law degree yet, you would be at the same level in terms of experience as someone who's entering a training contract. But you've got a lot more time to learn. Like, for example, at Simmons, for the first 4 years, I've got three 15-month long rotations in different teams, whereas trainees have 6-month long rotations. So that means that I get a much longer amount of time to learn about and get a taste of the type of work that are, the pieces of work that are done in different teams. So I'd say that definitely puts me at an advantage. I'd say, yeah, just learning how to work. I think having experience in general puts you at an advantage when it comes to getting a job or doing well at a job or being a really good lawyer. So I think putting your foot in and having that experience early on is like an advantage in itself. Yeah.
That's great, Angel. Thank you for that. And next one, again, the same question from Lucy to Lucy. In employment litigation, what kind of case scenarios do you most commonly deal with?
It's a really good question. It sort of depends on the law firm, what they specialize in. We do huge amounts we deal and represent clients on huge amounts of discrimination claims. So that's things where employees believe that they have been discriminated against, so unfairly treated because of them having what's called a protected characteristic. So a few examples of that might be their sex or their sexuality or their gender or their race or their religion. And they will bring a claim against their company for this. And we sometimes represent individuals, but at Simmons, we generally would represent the company. They might bring a claim against their employer or ex-employer really, if feel they've been unfairly dismissed. So if they think that they've been fired and they shouldn't have been. Similarly, if they report something that's gone wrong in the company, so something they think is illegal or doesn't comply with their regulatory obligations, for example, and then they feel that they have suffered from unfavorable treatment because they made that report, they might bring a whistleblowing claim, which we represent clients on as well. And then there might be things like equal pay claims, which is where an employee believes that they haven't been paid as much as someone else doing the same job effectively, and they might bring those. So there's a whole host. That's just a handful of types of claims that we work on. It's it's sort of an area of litigation, but because it's both so niche and so varied in itself, in our firm and in lots of firms in the city, we have a unique employment team who deal with that kind of litigation. I hope that answers it a little bit, Lucy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that, Lucy. And then the next one, I guess, is a bit of a unique one because we can have different perspectives from someone who's qualified and then someone who's sort of just starting out in their legal career. What are the hardest parts of the sort of work-life balance as a lawyer or as an apprentice? And what are the most enjoyable parts? Is there some kind of correlation between these two? Should I start with you on that one, Angel?
Okay. I would say as an apprentice, one of the hardest parts is, I guess, balancing the studying and working at the same time. So we usually we get 1 day a week, which is for me a Monday that we use to study, and then for the rest of the week we're working. So I'd say that is a struggle just because, studying a law degree can take quite a lot of time, especially when we've got exams. We've also got coursework to complete as well. Um, Yes, I'd say that's one of the hardest things. I'd say the other part of the question was about like the highs and lows, basically, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Um, I'd say like the highs is just like when you complete different pieces of work and you get used to it and you improve, getting good feedback and seeing that you're improving. But yeah, I'd say a low is just like figuring out or like just balancing the workload alongside the studying, especially when you've got like exams and coursework due.
And I think touching on that in terms of one of the questions we had was about balancing A levels and whether it's better to do three or to do four, so you get a slight more variation in your A levels. And I think that all is sort of a bit of a sort of a preparation before you go into an apprenticeship about how do you balance those sort of commitments and balance those with your extracurriculars when you want to do EPQs as well. So yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for that, Angel. What about yourself, Lucy? How do you interpret that question post qualification?
Thanks, Finley. It's a really good question. I think the highs are that it's incredibly exciting working in the city and in the legal world. Things happen really fast. There, depending on where you end up, you'll naturally be doing things for the first time. Some of it will be groundbreaking because it's never been done before because there is so much innovation going on in the city. You'll be problem solving all the time. I personally, something that gives me loads of thrill is, well, two things really. One is settling a claim. So when we have something really challenging and we manage to get both parties to agree, whether that's in a mediation or otherwise, it's for me very thrilling when we manage to um, get everyone happy and settled. And I also really enjoy investigation works because it feels a bit like being a police officer sometimes, interviewing people and working out who's done it and what's happened and what where do we go from here. So I find it immensely exciting. The flip side is that because it's also new and fast and demanding, it is a high pressured environment sometimes and the hours can be long sometimes. And there are brilliant law firms where, like Simmons, where they really do care about you and want to look after you. And simultaneously, sometimes you do just have to work really hard. So it's definitely not a job for the faint-hearted, but I think it's an incredibly rewarding one.
That's great. Thank you. And in our last few minutes, if you have got any more questions, please do continue to keep putting them in the Q&A function. This is a really interesting question that we've had about apprenticeships compared to the university route. So how would you say solicitor apprentices compare in their journeys through going through the standard university route, and how do they sort of juxtapose each other? So I guess, Angel, if you could talk about how did you sort of make that decision about which one was right for you, and then potentially yourself, Lucy, maybe you could talk about once you reach that training contract stage, how do you view people who are in a training cohort who have been through the apprenticeship route versus who have been through the traditional route, and how their experience compares? If I start again with you on that one, Angel.
Yeah, so I would say, well, first of all, just the fact that, I'm doing like practical, like work, like I'm working basically. I think, as you asked, one of the factors that I considered when choosing an apprenticeship over going to uni was just the fact that I like to learn whilst doing rather than through theory, and I prefer that. And I also like I had been working, so from the age like when I finished my GCSEs, I had a job, and so I wanted to do an apprenticeship so that I could work, but also work towards a higher qualification at the same time. I'd say one of the biggest differences between me as a solicitor apprentice and people that I have as friends who go to uni is, I guess, like the social aspect and the amount of time that they have. So as an apprentice, working 9 to 5 from Tuesday to Friday, studying on Monday, the amount of free time is just not the same. As like everyone else that works in like a corporate or like job or like in the city, you have to take annual leave, and so you have to plan in advance when you want to go on holidays. I think that's quite different. I'd say also just the social aspect. So at Simmons, our solicitor apprentice intake is quite small. So it's just me and another apprentice. So we take in 2 people at a time. So that means that the amount of, I guess, young people or people my age in the office is like very different to, people who go to university, and they've got a lot more people who are their age and having the same experience, which I think there are a lot of like events and initiatives in place to help apprentices come together. But I'd say that's definitely quite a big difference. I'll pass over to Lucy.
Thank you, Angel. I completely agree with all those things that you've just said. I think both come out as brilliant lawyers, and as Angel said, there are sort of different sacrifices along the way for either of them. If you're a solicitor apprentice, you do have to book off annual leave and you have less time than a uni student, but you do come out in so much less debt. And the solicitor apprentice program is fabulous in that sense. And I think both of them give you a brilliant training and a brilliant grounding in the city and in law. So I think they're both fabulous and they both produce excellent lawyers. So I can't really add much apart from what Angel's already said.
And I think that's something that people who are attending the session today are doing exactly the right thing. Is, you've got the advantage of time on your side to find out which pathway is right for you. And, do you like the idea of coming straight out of college and into work? Do you want to potentially explore a gap year, or are you ready for sort of the university life, the student life? And I think these are exactly the right questions to ask. So thank you so much for your time. I'll just see Patrick. Is there anything else you want to contribute?
No, that's fine for me at the moment. Sorry, I'm not on video, but that's been really helpful. Are there any other questions that we've got in, Finn? I'm just aware of time.
We've got the Q&A function is empty. We've managed to get through all of them.
Amazing. Well, listen, thank you so much for everybody. I'm sure, Finn, you're going to do this, but what we know from City Century, because we've recruited 300 or 400 solicitor apprentices into our over 50 firms over the last 3 years, is we absolutely know that the people that get the jobs are the people that properly engage with the information sharing and recruitment processes. So definitely keep coming to these. Definitely check us out on particularly our LinkedIn page, also our website. Also, we have some virtual work experience on our website, which is called City Century. Please have a go at that over the summer as well. Know that you're doing really well by being here. We know that this is one of the rooms where it happens. Big thanks to Angel, Lucy and Finn for organising today. Finn, I'm sure you're going to say some more, but really impressed that you're here, and this is how you get stuff to happen. I promise.
That's great. Thank you, Patrick. All that's left to say from me is thank you everyone for attending on your Monday night. Really, really appreciate it. As Patrick said, you're doing all the right things by being here. Our next session, episode 4, will be on the same time, 5 o'clock kickoff on Wednesday for our 4th session. And you have got that all emailed in with your link into the session, as well as a timetable of all the upcoming sessions. All that's left for me to say is a massive thank you to Angel, Lucy, Lily, and Rebecca from Simmons Simmons. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Ben.